Hello my dear friends and family, I'm Operator Starsky, and today we're talking about something that honestly looks like a tiny video clip, but it may be a very big story for the whole Black Sea. Because Ukraine just reported a successful hit on a Russian Kilo-class submarine in Novorossiysk, which is that very Russian sub that carries Kalibr missiles, and what makes it even more spicy, Ukraine says it was done with an underwater drone, the so-called subsea baby. Now, of course, Russia immediately says that nothing happened, everything's fine, go away, and that is their classic genre. But we have enough details to understand that even if they try to downplay it, this is a serious problem for the Russian invaders. And it also tells us a lot about how Ukraine is building a fleet without really even having a classic fleet. So let's talk about this story, this operation, how it was performed, what it changes, why Russians failed to detect the threat, and what this subsea baby thing even is. Several days ago, on December 15th, Ukraine's security service, the legendary SBU, said that they ran a special operation in the Russian port of Novorossiysk, that is their major naval base for the Russian ships at the Black Sea these days, because they're a bit too shy to dock in Crimea nowadays. According to the reports, the Russian Kilo-class submarine was successfully hit, and Ukraine says that explosion caused critical damage and basically put the submarine out of action, making it already second Russian submarine that was hit by Ukraine since 2022. One important thing about this submarine is that it's a platform that carries Russian Kalibr cruise missiles, the same missiles that Russian invaders used to attack Ukrainian cities, energy infrastructure, kindergartens, schools, and hospitals. And Ukraine's side says that the sub had 4 launch tubes for Kalibr on board. Now, the coolest thing about it is that for the first time ever, historically, an underwater drone hit a submarine like that. Reuters also reported Ukraine's claims and noted that Russia denied any damage, as always. It's absolutely crazy, my friends. First of all, Novorossiysk is not some sleepy fishing dock, it's a naval base. They have patrols, they have sensors, and all that serious Navy stuff. But here's the thing, most of that security is designed to stop the threats the Russians expect. For the first 2 years, Ukraine became very good at surface sea drones. We're talking Sea Baby, also Magura type drones, and many others. And those surface drones already forced the Russian invaders to move a lot of their ships away from Crimea, away from their base in Sevastopol, and hide deeper like in Novorossiysk. So the Russian invaders kind of adapted, but mostly for surface threats. Of course, they didn't expect Ukraine to literally emerge from under the water. The very concept of subsea baby looks like a development of the same idea. It's cheap, it's unmanned, it's hard to track, and it's made for one simple job: deliver explosives to a very expensive Russian target. I mean, guys, we are not talking about a tank or an aircraft. Submarine, my friends, it's a serious business. From what was publicly described, this operation was done by SBU together with the Ukrainian Navy. The drone approached the port area, got into the harbor zone, and detonated near the submarine. Now, the people ask, did it hit directly or was it a near miss? It's very important to understand that with submarines, even a near miss can be absolutely horrifying. Submarine is not like a normal ship. It has very sensitive internal systems. Add to this pressure, hull considerations, and shock effect. So even if the hull is not ripped open like in the movies, the internal damage can actually make the boat basically useless for a very long time. Some defense analysts say that damage like that can mean months for Russians, or even basically a write-off depending on what was hit and how bad the shock was. If the Russian submarine cannot safely sail, cannot dive, cannot launch missiles, can be repaired quickly, it's effectively out. And also there is one more big and very important detail. where do they even repair it? Russia loves to pretend that it has unlimited resources, but reality is boring and expensive. In the real life, you can't just patch a submarine with a bunch of duct tape because it requires a lot of efforts to repair the sophisticated systems of the submarine. Ukraine's side talked about replacement costs in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and even Western reporting repeated that this type of boat is expensive and hard to replace under sanctions. And also Turkey's restriction of Bosphorus means that Russia cannot really move damaged vessels in and out of the Black Sea. So based on what we know so far, we can make several important conclusions. First of all, Novorossiysk is not safe for the terror Russian ships anymore. Any future Russian deployments become more cautious, more slower, and more resourceful. And also Russia's leadership must explain again why the second army in the world cannot protect its own submarine inside its naval base. That is a big reputational loss for the Russians, but also a military problem, because if Ukraine can't do that once, then Russians must assume that it can happen again, not only to subs, but to any high-value targets in well-protected Russian ports. Now, why Russians failed to detect the drone and prevent the strike? This is basically the part where Russian propaganda truly becomes a comedy. First of all, of course, wrong expectations. For a long time, the main threat in the Black Sea was surface drones, aerial drones, and Ukrainian missiles. So they built habits around those specific threats. The underwater drones are a completely different category of threats. Detecting something small underwater is not a simple task, especially in a noisy area of the port. And also there is a tiny technical angle. Reports suggested that the blast was visible via security cameras, and some outlets said that those cameras might have been compromised. If that's true, it means that Ukraine didn't just build a very effective drone, Ukraine also built the intelligence picture around it. Now, what is the underwater Sea Baby thing? Sea Baby as a surface drone is, of course, already known as an SBU project that evolved very quickly. Over time, it became more than a simple kamikaze boat. There were versions shown with different modules, including heavy machine guns, anti-air missiles, and also containers with drones. In case of this specific attack, Ukrainian sources, of course, did not publish a full technical specification, and honestly, why would they? But what we can logically say from the result is that it can navigate underwater into a defended port areas. It can carry enough explosives to deliver a very serious damage. It can be operated in a way that avoids detection long enough to reach the target, and also it was used in coordination with intelligence, timing, and probably reconnaissance as well. So when people say that Ukraine has no fleet, I usually laugh just a bit, because without even having its own fleet, Ukraine somehow managed to wipe out about a third of the Russian Black Sea fleet, including a flagship and 2 submarines. Ukrainian fleet is not like any other fleet because it's basically built out of coastal missiles, aerial drones, surface sea drones, and now underwater drones as well. And this changes the whole balance. Because Russia can build a ship for $500,000, Ukraine can build a swarm of tiny drones for literally a fraction of that. If one of those drones gets through the Russian defense and disables a Russian submarine, the Russian invaders still lose the submarine, and that's a pretty serious business. If we zoom out a bit, we can see that Ukraine keeps pushing the Russian invaders away from the Black Sea, like a naughty cat trying to push a glass off the table, slowly, methodically, and very stubbornly. After almost 4 years of war, we can see Russians not docking proudly in Odessa somewhere, but trying to hide their ships around the Black Sea. But no matter what they do, Ukraine is not allowing them to feel safe anymore. And on a strategic scale, that affects shipping, it affects logistics, missile launch platforms, crew morale, and decision-making in the Russian command. With that, my dear friends and family, I gotta share my sorrow, because previously when a Russian ship was hit, we would joke that it joined a special Russian submarine fleet. Now, after the recent attack, I don't even know what to say anymore. Subscribe, share, and please keep supporting Ukraine in any way you can. I'm Operator Starsky. As always, I'll see you in the comments.